We welcome you back to this channel. Today we explore experiences of night terrors, discovering how a faceless figure, a deformed shadow, and a chilling presence infiltrate dreams, causing despair. Go ahead, turn off the lights, and let's take one more step into the world of the unknown. In the first story, we meet someone who, after moving, begins to experience increasingly intense night terrors. A dark, faceless figure slowly approaches their bed, and a child seems to be seeking help from beyond.
The last dream of Thomas.
For as long as I can remember, I have suffered from night terrors. My parents used to tell me it was common in children, and that it would eventually go away. But the years passed, and the night terrors became more intense, more real. Now I am 25 years old, and those horrible nights persist, robbing me of sleep and peace. It all began when we moved into an old house on the outskirts of town. My parents were excited about the opportunity to live in such a spacious house with so much history. I, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feeling of unease. There was something about that house that deeply disturbed me, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was. The first night I spent there, I had one of my worst night terrors. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, and the sensation that someone was watching me. I looked around my room, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow move in the corner. I blinked, and the shadow was gone. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but something inside me knew I had seen something real. The following days were calm, but the nights became torture. Every time I fell asleep, I dreamed of a dark, faceless figure slowly approaching my bed. No matter how hard I tried to wake up, my body was paralyzed, and I could only watch in horror as the figure came closer and closer. One night, the dream was different. Instead of the dark figure, I saw a small boy, about 7 or 8 years old, standing at the foot of my bed. His clothes were dirty and torn, and his eyes were two black pits of despair. He tried to tell me something, but his lips didn't move. I felt a wave of sadness and terror at the same time. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I woke up suddenly, gasping and with tears in my eyes. That night, I decided to investigate more about the house. I discovered that many years before we moved in, a family lived there. The youngest son, a boy named Thomas, had mysteriously disappeared one night and was never found. His disappearance cast a shadow of sadness over the house, and the family eventually moved away, unable to bear the pain. Knowing this story, everything began to make sense. I felt a mixture of fear and responsibility. Perhaps Thomas's spirit was trapped in the house, seeking help. I decided to try to communicate with him. That night, before going to sleep, I left a piece of paper and a pencil on the table next to my bed. I wrote, "Thomas, how can I help you?" I fell asleep with a sense of unease but also determination. In my dream, the boy appeared again. This time, he was closer. He reached out his hand to me, and for a moment our hands touched. I felt an icy cold run through my body and woke up with a start. I looked at the piece of paper, and, in shaky handwriting, it read, "Find my body." Fear and urgency mixed inside me. I knew I had to find Thomas's body to free him from his torment. I began searching around the house, exploring every corner. Finally, in an old cellar, I found a patch of disturbed earth. I started digging with my hands, feeling an inexplicable force guiding me. After what seemed like hours, my hands touched something hard. It was a small wooden box, deteriorated by time. I carefully opened it and found the remains of a child inside. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I whispered a prayer for Thomas. That night, the night terrors stopped. In my dreams, I saw Thomas one last time. This time, he was smiling. He thanked me and slowly faded into the light. Since then, the house felt warmer, less oppressive. My parents noticed the change in me, but I never told them the truth. I didn't want them to know the horror I had lived through. Now, I can sleep in peace, knowing I helped a lost soul find rest. But still, on the darkest nights, I sometimes wake up and feel a presence. It's not Thomas. It's something else. Something I have yet to discover. And my fear has returned, stronger than ever.
In our second story, we delve into the life of someone who always enjoyed sleeping, but now faces a tall, deformed shadow that pursues them in both dreams and reality.
Scratches in the night.
I've always been someone who loves to sleep. There's nothing more comforting than getting lost in the world of dreams. But for the past few months, my nights have become a constant source of terror. It all started with small awakenings in the middle of the night, feeling a strange presence in my room. At first, I attributed it to stress and lack of sleep, but soon I realized that something much darker was happening. The first time I experienced a true night terror was one winter night. I remember waking up abruptly, unable to move a muscle. I felt immense pressure on my chest, as if something invisible was crushing me. I tried to scream, but my voice didn't respond. I could only move my eyes, and that's when I saw it. A tall, dark shadow loomed over me from the corner of the room. Its eyes, two pits of pure darkness, seemed to devour the little light in the room. The shadow had a vaguely human form, but its limbs were disproportionate, elongated, and twisted like dead branches. Its face, or what seemed to be a face, was deformed, with features that faded and twisted as if made of smoke. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just a bad dream, sleep paralysis as I had read about online. However, the following nights didn't improve. Almost every night, I woke up paralyzed, with that same shadow watching me. Sometimes I could hear a low whisper, barely perceptible, that filled the room with an unbearable cold. I started to dread going to sleep. I decided to tell my mother what was happening, hoping she might be able to help. She, a practical-minded woman, took me to a doctor who prescribed sleeping pills. But the pills only intensified my nightmares. Now, I not only saw the shadow in my room, but also in my dreams, chasing me through dark hallways and endless labyrinths. One night, after a week of hardly any sleep, I decided to stay awake all night. I sat on my bed with the light on and a book in hand, hoping the light would scare away the shadow. Hours passed, and just when I started to believe I was safe, the lamp flickered and went out. Panic flooded me as I tried to turn it back on, but it was useless. The shadow was there, at the foot of my bed, closer and more tangible than ever. That night, when morning finally came, I found scratches on my body. They weren't deep, but enough to make me understand I wasn't safe, even awake. The scratches were irregular, as if invisible claws had run across my skin while I slept. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and tears of fear rolled down my cheeks. Each scratch was tangible proof that what was happening wasn't just my imagination. I sought help from various sources, from psychologists to spiritualists, but nothing seemed to work. The shadow kept coming back, each time more aggressive. Finally, after months of torment, I decided to confront it. One night, when I felt its presence, I tried to move, to speak, anything to show it I wasn't afraid. It was an immense struggle, but I managed to let out a scream. The shadow retreated, but it didn't disappear. I faced it night after night, and although it hasn't gone away completely, its power over me has diminished. Now, I sleep with the light on and a crucifix under my pillow. Sometimes I still see it, but it no longer paralyzes me. I've learned to live with it, though every night is a battle to keep it at bay. I'm still seeking answers, hoping for the day this malevolent presence vanishes completely. Until then, each night is a mix of fear and determination. I don't know what it is or why it chose me, but I know I won't let it consume me. The shadow is still there, but so am I, stronger and more determined than ever.
Finally, we hear the story of Javier, who lives alone in his apartment and is haunted by a thin figure that appears every night. A special amulet seems to be his only protection.
The Night Visitor.
My name is Chris, and I want to share the most terrifying story of my life. It all started a few years ago, when I began experiencing what doctors called night terrors. At first, I thought they were just nightmares, but soon I realized they were much more than that. I live alone in a small apartment in the city. My nights were normal, until suddenly, I began waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat and with my heart racing. The first time it happened, I got up and walked around the house to make sure everything was in its place. The shadows in the corners seemed to move, but I assumed it was my imagination. The second night was worse. I woke up with a start, unable to move. A feeling of pressure on my chest made it hard to breathe. In front of my bed, in the dim light, I saw a tall, thin figure. I couldn't make out its face, but I knew it was looking at me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I closed my eyes tightly, and when I opened them again, the figure was gone. These experiences became recurrent. Each night the figure came closer and closer. It reached a point where I could feel it at the edge of my bed, almost breathing in my face. My friends told me it was just my mind playing tricks, but I knew it was real. I could feel its presence, an intense cold filling the room. One night I decided to stay awake. I didn't want to face that terrifying figure again. I turned on all the lights in the apartment and sat on the couch with a cup of coffee. But exhaustion overcame me, and without realizing it, I fell asleep. I woke up in the dark. The lights had gone out, though I remembered leaving them on. Then I felt it, that presence stronger than ever. I was not alone in my apartment. The figure appeared again, but this time it wasn't in the corner or at the foot of the bed. It was standing next to me, on the couch. I could feel its cold breath on my neck. A chilling whisper brushed my ear, saying words I couldn't understand, but that filled my heart with indescribable terror. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond. It was as if an invisible force held me paralyzed. I closed my eyes tightly and prayed for it all to end. I felt an icy hand on my shoulder, and at that moment I screamed with all my might. The lamp next to the couch suddenly turned on and the figure disappeared. That was the last night I saw the figure, but the fear never left. I still feel its presence in the shadows, watching me, waiting for the moment to return. I stopped sleeping in my apartment and started staying at friends' houses, but I knew I couldn't run away forever. I sought help everywhere, from doctors to paranormal experts. Everyone had theories, but no one could give me a definitive answer. Finally, I met an old man who lived on the outskirts of the city. He told me that night terrors were more than just hallucinations. They were manifestations of spirits trapped between this world and the next. He gave me an amulet, assuring me it would protect me. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but I was desperate. Since I've had the amulet, the nights have been quieter, though the feeling of being watched never completely disappeared. Now, every night before I sleep, I place the amulet under my pillow and pray that the figure never returns. Though the fear still lives inside me, I've learned to live with it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to sleep peacefully, but at least for now the figure remains in the shadows, waiting.
Thank you for journeying with us through the dark passages of these stories. If you enjoyed them, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more tales of terror. Until next time, where fear will once again be your companion.